Hi, welcome back to the State of the Nation. I'm your host, Mike Sham. Today, we are joined by the one and only Mr. Chris Pappas, the mayor of the uMngeni local municipality down in KZN. Hello, Chris. Welcome to the State of the Nation.
Morning, Mike. Thank you very much for having me today.
So, everybody is very, very excited by the work that you're doing down there in KZN, where certainly in that part of the world, it's kind of been a two-party state, hasn't it? It's between back in the 1990s, the IFP ruled supreme until Jacob Zuma came on the scene, and then that support seemed to switch to the ANC. Now the DA are running the uMngeni municipality, and you're doing a hell of a job down there.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So it has been largely a two-party province, and in recent years, largely a one-party province with the ANC. But in the last elections, we saw a shift in the majority of the municipalities here. So the majority of the municipalities, when you look at them in terms of, I think there's 54 of them, are no longer in the hands of the ANC. In fact, the South African Local Government Association, SALGA, here in this province is run by the IFP with the DA's support. We are their casting vote. So yeah, that organization's changed hands and is no longer ANC majority council representative, which is exciting. I mean, it creates competition, and it means that everyone's got to be on their toes and can no longer be complacent about the way that they govern.
Now, Chris, you've had seemingly have the two sort of biggest spots on your CV, the two biggest issues that keep on getting raised is the fact that you've done such a good job, but very often it's overshadowed by your ability to speak Zulu.
Yeah. So if I was a black South African sitting here speaking English to you, it wouldn't be such an amazing thing. But I think perhaps it's a sign of where we can heal, where we can grow better as a country, is to be able to communicate with each other across color, race, religion, whatever it might be. And perhaps maybe that's the reason why I get so many accolades for such a basic thing.
You were brought up in the area?
Yeah, just up the road in Mooi River. There's a small town in the municipality next door, but largely grew up in the farming areas outside Giant's Castle, which is in the Drakensberg.
Now, as I said, sometimes that issue, which, as you quite rightly point out, should be something that we should all do as a matter of course, it overshadows what probably your best achievement, and that is the way you've set about running your municipality. Right? You post a lot on social media, and it looks like in the absence of usual sort of bureaucracy, you've had some real action down there which has not gone unnoticed. Does that sum it up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally an impatient person. So government slowness and heaviness, and I think Jordan Hill Lewis described it the one day. He says like swimming through peanut butter. But you have to constantly push it back against that. And Helen Ziller said to us, as the DA mayors, when we gathered at one stage, she said, "No, don't let government officials tell you that something is not possible, is illegal, without them showing you the policy or the law that proves that." So I've taken those sort of things to heart, and you have to push through. Yes, there's still a heck of a lot of challenges, and we are nowhere where we want to be. But we are satisfied that there is progress every day, and that we are breaking the obstacles to further progress in future. I think a lot of the things that the people that we are doing now, people will only see the benefits in 4 or 5 years' time. When it comes to any business, when it comes to any organized structure, specifically the size and complexity of a municipality, you have to get your internal processes right, your governance, your standard operating procedures, your policies, and those are the non-sexy things that the public doesn't see. The staffing issues, the training, the development, the organizational structures. So people see the potholes, they see the street lights, and the grass cutting, and we need to obviously actively work towards those, because those are the byproduct of good financial management and good governance. But it's the hours and hours that we spend trying to change the organizational culture and set up a proper governance structure that will ultimately benefit this municipality. And it's difficult, Mike. It's slow, it's difficult. Human behavior naturally, or that is one of the most difficult things to change. And government doesn't like change generally. But when you've got a change of political party, a change of ideology, a change of vision and leadership in this very stagnant institution, then it is a difficult thing to do. But to answer your question, we are making progress, and I'll never be satisfied at the pace at which we do it. But if I, lie in bed and take a sober reflection at night, I am happy that there's more going right than is going wrong, and there are more things that we are achieving now than were being done before. And ours is just to take the public along with us. It's to ensure people, to reinforce, to bring confidence that there is a plan and we are executing it.
Now, Chris, if I'd like to just sort of stay on the one point that you raised. We recently, I had the opportunity to sit down here in our studios in Parkhurst, Johannesburg, with the recently ousted mayor of Johannesburg, Dr. Mpho Phalatse, and we spoke about some of the issues that she encountered here in Johannesburg, and obviously further down the road as to what her ambitions are. But what I want to just sort of discuss with you are many of the issues that she raised are issues that you raised, and that is the fact that it's not something, you don't just, this is not a movie. You don't just walk in and 24 hours later you've done a clean out of the bad people and you get everybody speaking off the same page and everything's great and the municipality suddenly turns it around. I mean, if you found a big challenge in what would be even though geographically big, but a smaller municipality, the challenges must be enormous in a place like Johannesburg.
I feel very sorry for Mpho and her whole administration, because the expectations on a city like Johannesburg, they've got over 60 billion rand worth of budget, 4 or 5 million people, infrastructure backlogs, and just the complexity of that, like you can't believe. I have 120,000 people here. My biggest settlement is 40,000 people, which is in uMngeni, and then Howick at about 35. And I only have 280 permanent staff members. She must have had, 8, 9, 10, 12,000 staff members. And each one of those people and each one of the policies and little nooks and crannies in the municipality need to be unpacked, cleaned out, not necessarily people fired, but, things need to change. I feel sorry for her with the public expectation on how quickly you want to do things, and more especially because of the political situation that she found herself in. And it will be the same for any leader that takes over there, interim or not. But, when you have to manage, when you spend so much time and energy managing a coalition where, a party of one with 2 or 3% has more power than a party of 34, I don't know how many councils the DA has there, it must be 100 or so, with 30-something% of the vote, but you have equal power. It's not a true reflection of what democracy wants. So you have a large population in Johannesburg that wants to see forward movement and growth and progress and change, but it's been held back by politicians who want power and position. And now Mpho is stuck in the middle. She's the executive mayor who's got to balance all of that, at the same time delivering services in a structure that's been created not to deliver services but siphon money. All the agencies that exist in the city of Johannesburg, whether it's the road agency or Pick It Up or all these entities that were created to pay board members, they weren't created as service delivery mechanisms. We don't have those challenges. We've got our own, obviously, with budgets and capacity and rate paying bases and things like that. But and anyone who would expect Johannesburg to become, the Cape Town CBD in a year and a half, with any political party, given the laws and the restrictions that we have in our country, it's not realistic. So I think part of that is educating ourselves as South Africans about how government works. As you say, it's not like a movie where the American president just comes in with 5 black vehicles, waves a wand, and bridges built, or things change overnight. Mayor Palacio saves the day. it's hard work. It's like any big business that needs intervention.
Yeah, but obviously, it will be made easier if you had some music playing in the background. But clearly, these things are more complex. And as we head towards, South Africa is becoming more complex, not less. And the issues are becoming more and more intertwined and nefarious and so on. We're heading towards coalitions. You could very well find yourself in a coalition in the province of KZN. That's looking on the cards. Gauteng's looking like a provincial coalition. And, even nationally, there's a chance that we may have a coalition government. Now, there's two issues. One is, in fact, you could say there's three issues. One is to get your coalition partners, not too power hungry to let that get in the way of delivery. The next part is that you're going to be fighting some forces of darkness that see their money machine being taken away from them. And then thirdly, you have the people that are meant to be the civil service, although they don't not sort of overly renowned for their service. How optimistic are you that these coalitions will actually be able to work and produce a better outcome for citizens?
I want to be a realist, and first I want to be an optimist and think that we can make them work. But I also want to be a realist in the sense that it's really in the hands of South Africans. That if we want to have 1,000 political parties sitting in Parliament, then that's up to us. If we want to vote for the purple cows and all these pop-up parties that come along, which creates instability. So as South Africans, we can either choose instability and difficulty, which can be part of the process of democracy. We're 27 years old, 28 years old. There's countries that have gone 200, 300, 400 years with democracy and have experienced all of this, coalitions and one-party states and all of these sorts of things, and we're very young. But, we can decide as South Africans, how do we want to see our democracy mature? Do we want to painfully go through tiny little coalitions to get there, which is possible and it's legal and it's within our constitutional framework, but it will be painful? Or do we want to create bigger parties of power? In other words, 3 or 4 political parties in the country that then, like your Scandinavian countries, then balance power between themselves and are able to make much quicker progress. But that really is up to South Africans. Do we want a 1% party? Do we want a 25 to 30% party with governance experience at the center of a coalition? But I'm an optimist. I like to believe that generally, when there's no cameras around and people aren't trying to storm stages, we can sit in committee meetings as politicians and generally make progress on the important issues, so long as the balance of power within those circles, within those forums, allows for that sort of discussion to happen, as opposed to abuse, like I spoke about in the city of Johannesburg, for positions in power.
Now, you've taken over your hot seat from the ANC, am I correct? They were in power for how long in that particular area?
Since democracy started.
And have you had a lot of backlash from the people you're working with? I mean, obviously, once again, to juxtapose it to the position up here in Gauteng with the metros, the backlash was terrible, both at a political as well as a civil service level, where people would just undermine the government. Have you had those obstacles to overcome down there?
Definitely not as much as you've had in Johannesburg. I think firstly we have a majority government here in uMngeni, so it's a lot. It's staff members, unions, etc. They know where the balance of power is, and it's easier for us to make decisions, legal decisions, through council and make them binding, as opposed to constantly being destabilized because of not having that majority. So majority government is very important, specifically at local government level. The second thing is we haven't got 12,000 staff members, so people know each other by name. We know where each other's offices are, what we do, etc., etc. So it's a lot harder to get up to all sorts of shenanigans when you have that close relationship. It's more of a community rather than what you have in the city of Johannesburg, with this huge beast. And then lastly is our approach to governance as well. There was a lot of fear here in the municipality when we took over. There's all sorts of rumors flying that we've asked for everyone's CVs and everyone's going to, there's all sorts of things. It was great at the time because it made everyone, get into line, and it didn't come from us. But what it meant was that we had to take a mature approach to the project that we are undertaking. It's the first time that a Democratic Alliance government has come into government here in KZN. So there's huge expectations, there's huge uncertainty. They've never experienced this sort of culture. We've seen down the road IFP, and we've seen ANC, and we've experienced all of those. And our staff and our unions and the residents, businesses didn't know what to expect in terms of how we would roll things out. So we had to approach it with a level of maturity to say, we can't come in and purge. We can't come in and just cause incredible disruptions. We need to manage change and do that in a way that we deliver services, but also keep stability here in the municipality. Where we have had some pushback is from the ANC, specifically in the ANC wards. They're not very good in council. They are not good at being opposition. They still speak as if what they say is the end product, and that's going to go into a resolution and be enacted. And they get very frustrated when we say, no, sorry, that's not how it's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. They get very frustrated and try and debate it, but our speaker is very good at handling that. But in their communities where there are ward councillors, generally, not everywhere, they've tried to use misinformation, create rumors, try and spread things that create friction between the community and the municipality or the council. They haven't done it very successfully, and we are managing that. But that's sort of been the biggest pushback. But even there, it hasn't been hugely destabilizing.
Now, as you said, it's the first DA win in KZN. Do you think it has a knock-on effect in the region, or do you think it's it's down to uMngeni, the specific circumstances, the specific person in yourself? What's your sense? Do you think that because I mean, as I said, sitting down with people like Populatsisa, Leersbrink, etc., even John Steenhuisen, you get a continual sort of thing of, where we govern better. Obviously, up here in Gauteng, it's almost impossible to govern at the moment. But do you see that sort of sense that people are hearing the good news and it's spreading, or not overly?
No, I do think so. I think that there's two important things that people have sort of come to realize or are realizing. Three, sorry. The first is that change is possible through the ballot box. I think people have lost faith in democracy and its ability to bring about some sort of change. And in this municipality, we did that not through violence or overthrowing or storming the stage or whatever it might be, but we've done it through the ballot box. So that's the first important thing that people are realizing. The second thing is in KZN, or in general, I suppose, is that the DA is a white party. We're going to take away your title deeds. We're going to bring back apartheid. We're going to, all the propaganda that the ANC puts out there. And that's not true. And we're proving that through just governing what we're supposed to do for the people. We haven't brought back apartheid or stolen title deeds and all the other things that people expected that the ANC said we were going to do. So we are able to debunk their lies by just being a good government and doing what the Constitution says we should do. And then the last thing is that it's put pressure on our immediate neighbors, but in KZN municipalities in general. As I said, people only knew of two ways of governance, and we've come along and sort of shaken that up a little bit and said, actually, you can do it this way as well. And people prefer it this way, or a large part of people prefer it this way, whether it's the communication or the things that we focus on or the way in which we tackle important issues. And people are appreciating that. It's not always popular, but people are appreciating that. And it's forcing our neighbors to do the same, specifically down the road in Msunduzi, Pietermaritzburg, where you've seen, and admittedly from a lot of their senior staff members, that we've put pressure on their leadership to do things differently by the way we do things.
Now, you mentioned earlier some of the wards that are not under your control within your municipality. Is it your sense that the feeling in those wards might change? In other words, much like we saw in the Western Cape, where there were many ANC strongholds that eventually almost, if you want to call it, capitulated and started to vote for the DA in the Western Cape. Just within a very localized, you're obviously sitting in a petri dish at the moment for some of the rural areas. Do you see any breakthrough within those wards that I presume have been absolutely solidly behind the ANC ever since 1994?
Absolutely. I definitely see that. I see it. Firstly, I mean, it's not a scientific way, but when you look at the sentiment of people in those, in specifically ANC stronghold areas on social media now, as compared to before the election, specifically towards the Democratic Alliance, it's completely changed. We have people who are, or communities that were antagonistic toward it, now defending a new government, which at a later stage you can translate to say, well, this government is run by the DA, and maybe you should get behind us. Rural communities in particular, so not yes, the township and the township areas, I've seen a change there, but the peri-urban and rural areas in particular, because we've put a lot of focus on those areas which have been ignored largely, because in terms of winning votes, the ANC saw a lot of their votes in the township areas and neglected these areas. So we've also put a lot more focus on trying to equalize or bring some sort of equilibrium to service delivery across the municipality. But again, it goes back to the point that I made earlier, is that, we don't have to go out there and do profound things. We have to do the basics and deliver on our constitutional mandate. And where that hasn't been happening before, and we can start to show that, people automatically see an improvement. And somewhere like uMngeni, which is our biggest township, it's about 40,000 people, if we were getting, what were we getting over there? About 8% of the vote. Am I lying? Yeah, about 6 to 8% of the vote. I don't need to get 50% of the vote there. I need to get 20. I need to get 18% of the vote. And that's thousands more people getting behind the Democratic Alliance in one election cycle, changing mindsets. I mean, it's a very difficult thing in South Africa. As I said, we a young democracy. The next election, 20 and 25 and 30, etc. So yeah, there is a mindset shift, and I'm confident that will lead to increased voters in the next election.
Because of course, there's the old sort of Gugulethu issue, isn't it? And that is that every time you mention the city of Cape Town and any achievement, social media is awash with, go and see the downside, go and see what life is like in Khayelitsha. You got a bit of that at the start of your mayoralty, didn't you?
Yeah, of course, Mike. But if you look at it practically, you look at realistically, and like I said, there's propaganda when we can that we're going to take title deeds and all these sorts of things, and that's the propaganda that the ANC uses to say, okay, yes, but you have people living in Clifton and Fresno. Why don't the people in Gugulethu live like that? But that's the same in any city in the world. You have areas of higher income, areas of lower income. Our phenomenon here in South Africa is that those lower income areas were designed, engineered by a government for the purpose that they serve. Now, any government that comes in to a city like the city of Cape Town or any of the big metros, anywhere actually where you have townships, the objective is to make sure that the opportunities of people in those areas improves, that the environmental, so your litter, whatever it might be, improves, that the ability for people to have social mobility upwards improves. You're never going to turn Gugulethu into Fresno. You're never going to turn Alexander into Sandton. But what you need to do is you need to make sure that someone who lives in Gugulethu has the best opportunities to get education as possible. That when they go to a clinic, it's a world-class clinic, the same type of clinic that you would get in Fresno. You need to make sure that the streets are as clean. You need to make sure that the public transport runs, that the electricity works as much as it does in the rich areas, that there's as few potholes, etc. So the objective of government is to ensure that you have access to opportunities for social mobility. Because as soon as someone moves out of Gugulethu, I can promise you someone else will move into that space. Because you'll always have cycles. You'll always have, I suppose it's cycles of people who have low income, middle and higher income. And your objective as government is to make sure that those at the bottom end are protected as much as possible. Now, if you look at the life circumstances of people living in Gugulethu, they have some of the best healthcare in South Africa, if not the best healthcare in South Africa. Recently, I think it was last year, the year before, I saw a brand new hospital being opened up in Khayelitsha, state of the art. While you've got Charlotte Matleke sitting in Gauteng, you've got Prince uMngeni sitting in Umlazi. You have the best access to, or the easiest access to job opportunities with the lowest unemployment rate. You have crime rates going down in those areas opposed to going up in some of the Gauteng and KZN townships. So there will always be that, no matter where you are in Brazil, in the favelas, or in the lower parts of New York. But government's objective and government's responsibility is to make sure that there's access to opportunities. So I debunk that. I say, if you want to see what bad looks like, come to the Umlazi township here in Durban. If you want to see what bad looks like, look at those sorts of places, because you can go to Prince uMngeni and it's terrible. The schools are not so good. The roads are falling apart. There's sewer running in the streets. It's terrible. So the same is here. I'm never going to make uMngeni into an exclusive suburb. But what I need to do is make sure that someone who lives there feels that they have access to opportunities to improve their life and move to where they go to, or open the business that they want to, or send their child to a good school locally and not far away.
And, you mentioned that you could never turn Alexandra into Sandton. Well, the ANC have managed to turn Sandton into Alexandra, but, so politicians wield a lot of power. Chris, I want to close off with just a bigger picture and looking at KZN as a whole, because KZN is going to be, I think, it's got the makings of quite a roadmap for South Africa, either for good or for bad. We know what happened in KZN in the late 80s, early 90s, and how destructive that was. And obviously it's been historically, other than the Western Cape, the most contested area. People tend to forget that in the 1994 elections, the Inkatha Freedom Party actually won that province. And then set about quite a mad campaign of almost sort of quasi-royalty under Buthelezi. And they were the original plunderers of the province's coffers. And then along came Jacob Zuma and secured KZN as the ANC's biggest supporting bloc. But those days seem to be receding. What is your outlook for KZN as a whole, and what role will the DA and Chris Pappas be playing?
So it's going to be a very interesting election here in KZN. If you look at it from a voter psychology point of view, KZN voters are used to changing their votes, as you've indicated the history. And even at a local government level, we have, sort of locally based, I wouldn't call them independents, locally based parties who break away from the ANC or the IFP, form a party and get a number of seats in council, because people are not scared to change their vote, which is an interesting dynamic. So there's a lot of voters up for play for political parties in this province, and we have to obviously go out and convince them why we're the better option. But then secondly is how close it already is. So as I indicated, if you take the local government statistics, the ANC is already below 50%. If you look at the KwaZulu-Natal Legislature, I think the difference there's 80 seats, and the difference between the combined opposition and the ANC is 1 or 2 seats. So there's a lot at play here. I think what is going to be incredibly important is the internal stability of the IFP going forward. At the moment, they have some sort of stable leadership, although there's a power battle between Thabisa and Ntuli, the chairperson and the leader, or the president. We don't, no one actually knows who leads at any one time, but I think that the balance of power sits with Ntuli. And then obviously who the ANC, how they go about their organizational change, as they say. Are they going to continue along the same path that they have, putting the same candidates, the same factions, the same culture? Or are they going to learn from their mistakes and change the way that they do things, which I think is impossible. And then you get people like the Democratic Alliance and the EFF mainly. The other political parties are sort of one-man parties that fluctuate over elections. But those two political parties will be the kingmakers in the balance of power. And again, it comes down to what the voters want. Do the voters want, an ANC, EFF disaster? Do they want an IFP, DA stability? There'll be issues and there's challenges that we have to overcome, but there'll be stability. We've worked together before. We share a number of values and the vision that is similar, as opposed to a different option, which is just about access to, as you said, plundering. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. My role, well, I hope that my role here in uMngeni shows people that democracy can work. I hope that my role here shows that there is a difference, that we can, good governance is possible, progress is possible. And I'll be out on the campaign trail across the province, speaking to people, telling them that KZN can be different. You don't have to have an abusive relationship with your government all the time. Really
want to thank Mayor Chris Pappas from the uMngeni municipality for joining us today on State of the Nation. If you've enjoyed this interview, please subscribe to our channel. We bring you a lot of great stuff. And Chris Pappas, thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I hope to see you guys in future again. Thank you.